Listen closely. Can you hear it? That wet, desperate sound of a heart trying to beat its way out of a rib cage that's become a prison. It's 3 in the morning, and somewhere, right now, a man is staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks like rosary beads, wondering how many bodies it takes to fill the void where his soul used to live. I once knew a philosopher, brilliant mind, terrible posture, the kind of man who could quote Schopenhauer in 7 languages, but couldn't look a woman in the eye without trembling. He told me, between sips of absinthe that tasted like regret, that lust was humanity's greatest joke. We chase skin, he whispered, believing it will set us free. But every conquest is just another link in the chain we forge ourselves. Mesh. Have you ever watched a moth circle a flame? Really watched it? Not the casual glance of someone who already knows the ending, but the deep, disturbing observation of someone who recognizes themselves in those desperate spirals. The moth doesn't love the flame. It's hypnotized by it, drugged by the very light that will reduce it to ash. And here's the grotesque truth. The moth knows. Deep in whatever passes for consciousness in that tiny, powder-winged brain, it knows the flame means death. But knowing changes nothing. There's an old Romanian folktale about a man who fell in love with his own hunger. Not metaphorically, literally. He became so obsessed with the feeling of emptiness in his belly that he refused all food, growing thinner and thinner until he could slip through the cracks in the floorboards. The villagers found him eventually, living between the walls, sustained by nothing but the exquisite pain of his own starvation. They say on quiet nights, you can still hear him scratching, trying to make himself small enough to disappear entirely. Modern men have become that folklore incarnate, haven't they? Only instead of starving for food, they gorge on flesh, each conquest making them hungrier than before. A 2024 study from the Institute of Human Sexuality found that men who engaged in compulsive sexual behavior reported feeling more isolated after each encounter than before, like vampires who discover that blood tastes like sand. Picture this: a man in an expensive suit, cologne that costs more than most people's rent, standing in a club at 2 a.m. The lights paint everyone in shades of desperation. He's counting conquests like a miser counts coins. But here's what Kierkegaard would find delicious. Each victory is actually a defeat. Every notch on his bedpost is really a nail in his coffin. He thinks he's Don Juan, but he's actually Sisyphus, pushing his boulder of flesh up the mountain, only to watch it roll back down, leaving him emptier than before. The butcher's embrace. That's what I call it. You know why? Because lust treats bodies like meat, weighing them, pricing them, consuming them, discarding the bones. But here's the sick joke. When you're the butcher, you're also the meat. Every time you reduce another human to their parts, the curve of a hip, the arch of a back, the wetness of a mouth, you're hacking away pieces of your own humanity, selling yourself by the pound. There's a peculiar madness that sets in when a man realizes he's been making love to ghosts. Not literal specters, but the phantom impressions left by bodies that meant nothing. Names he can't remember. Faces that blur together like watercolors in the rain. He reaches for them in the dark, and grasps only air perfumed with stale sweat and designer fragrance. I met a neuroscientist once, brilliant woman, dead eyes, who explained that the brain releases the same chemicals during orgasm as it does during a heroin high. But here's the kicker, she said, lighting her third cigarette in 20 minutes. Tolerance builds. What satisfied you at 20 will bore you at 30. What thrilled you at 30 will disgust you at 40. By 50, you're injecting poison straight into your veins just to feel something that resembles what a simple kiss used to give you. The ancient Greeks had a word, akrasia, acting against one's better judgment. They understood that humans are the only animals stupid enough to knowingly walk into traps. A mouse might fall for the cheese once, but men will spring the same trap on themselves 1,000 times, each time swearing it will be different, each time tasting metal instead of cheese. Here's something they won't tell you in those self-help seminars where damaged men pay thousands to learn how to be alpha. Every wolf dies alone. Pack leaders, lone wolves, domesticated dogs. Death doesn't discriminate. But the wolf who spent his life hunting, he dies hungry. The wolf who learned to be still, to find sustenance in solitude, he dies satisfied. Tell me, dear listener, when did you first realize that your hunger was eating you alive? When did you discover that the prison you're in has no locks because you are both the prisoner and the guard? The flesh market never closes. It's always 3 a.m. somewhere, always someone counting ceiling cracks, always another moth circling another flame. But some men, the lucky ones, the cursed ones, the ones who've been burned enough times to recognize the smell of their own charred wings. Some men learn to love the darkness instead. Not the darkness of ignorance, but the darkness of closed eyes, of turned backs, of walking away from the flame that promises warmth, but delivers only ash. The darkness where you finally stop performing for an audience that was never watching anyway. In that darkness, something strange happens. The hunger doesn't disappear. It transforms. Instead of devouring others, it begins to digest itself, breaking down into something almost like wisdom, almost like peace, almost like the first breath after drowning. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a different truth for a different hour of the night. Every woman you desire is just your mother wearing a different mask. There's a room in Prague, 3rd floor, overlooking the cemetery where Kafka rots, where they keep a mirror that hasn't been cleaned since 1894. The silver backing has oxidized, creating patterns that look like veins, like rivers, like the neural pathways of a dying brain. Local legend says if you stare into it long enough, you'll see not your reflection, but your hunger. I've been there. What I saw made me understand why Oedipus chose blindness. Let me tell you something that will make your skin crawl across your bones. Every man is in love with a ghost that wears his mother's perfume. Not literally. God, if only it were that simple. No, it's more insidious, more baroque, like a tumor that grows in the shape of your first heartbreak. Freud was a cocaine addict who wanted to fuck his mother, but even broken clocks tell time twice a day. He understood that desire is archaeology. We dig through bodies looking for artifacts of our earliest wounds. A 2023 study from the Vienna Institute of Depth Psychology found that 87% of men unconsciously seek partners who mirror their earliest caregivers' emotional patterns. We're not looking for love. We're looking for the chance to rewrite our first rejection. I once watched a man, successful surgeon, hands that could stitch souls back into bodies, absolutely dissolve when his girlfriend wore her hair the same way his mother did in 1987. He couldn't explain it, just stood there in his kitchen, holding a coffee mug like it was the last solid thing in a melting world, whispering, "She used to wear it like that when she tucked me in." Here's what they don't teach you in those pickup artist seminars where desperate men pay to learn how to pretend they're not desperate. Every woman you've ever wanted is the same woman. Oh, the faces change. The bodies rearrange themselves into new configurations of desire. But strip away the skin, the smell, the sound of their laugh, and what remains? The same hollow you've been trying to fill since you were 4 years old and realized that love was conditional. There's an ancient Sumerian myth about a man who fell in love with an echo. Not Echo herself, just the sound bouncing off cave walls. He spent 40 years talking to stone, hearing his own need reflected back at him, convinced he was having a conversation with God. When he finally emerged, the world had moved on without him. His children were strangers. His wife had married his brother. But he didn't care. He just searched for another cave. Modern dating apps are those caves, algorithmically perfected. Swipe, swipe, swipe. Each face a potential echo. Each match a chance to hear your own damage sung back to you in a different key. We've industrialized loneliness, mass-produced it, made it scrollable. But here's the truly grotesque part. The women know. Of course they know. They can smell it on you like fear sweat, this desperate need to make them into something they're not. Your salvation, your mother, your therapist, your God. A woman I met in Berlin, eyes like broken bottles, told me, "Men don't see us, they see mirrors, and get angry when we don't reflect what they want." Picture a man in bed, 4 a.m., next to a woman whose name might be Sarah or Sandra or something that starts with S. He's studying her sleeping face like an archaeologist examining hieroglyphs, looking for signs, portents, evidence that she's the one. But here's what Schopenhauer would cackle about from his grave. The one is just another way of saying the first. We're all trying to get back to the womb, that original ocean where we were truly held. The mirror bleeds because truth is hemorrhaging. Every time you project your mother onto another woman's face, you're committing a kind of psychic violence against her, against yourself, against the possibility of ever seeing clearly. It's like those old daguerreotypes where the image burns into the plate, except you're both the camera and the subject, exposed and exposing, capturing nothing but your own distortion. I knew a philosopher, brilliant, broken, the kind of man who could explain Hegel but couldn't explain why he kept dating women who hated him. He had this theory that men don't actually want to be loved. They want to win the love they never got. It's not about her, he'd say, wine drunk and weeping. It's about proving I was worthy all along. Here's a thought experiment that will ruin your next date. Try to describe the woman across from you without using any comparison to another woman you've known. Not, She laughs like, not she reminds me of, not she has the same. Just her as she is, unreferenced and real. You can't do it. None of us can. We're all walking around with our heads full of ghosts, trying to fuck our way back to the living. When was the last time you actually saw a woman? Not your projection, not your need, not your mother's shadow falling across her face, but the actual, breathing, complicated human sitting there, waiting for you to finally notice she's not who you think she is? The Buddhists have a word, Maya, the illusion that what we perceive is reality. But they were only half right. The real illusion is believing we're perceiving it all. We're just watching movies of our own making, casting unwilling actors in dramas they never auditioned for. There's a building in Tokyo where they sell mirrors that only reflect what you want to see. Businessmen pay thousands of yen to stand before these lying glasses, seeing themselves as heroes, as lovers, as the men their fathers wanted them to be. The owner told me, cigarette dangling from his lips like a hanged man, "I'm not selling mirrors. I'm selling blindness." Every man who's ever said, "You're not like other girls," was really saying, "You remind me of the first girl who didn't love me enough." Every woman who's ever heard it knew she was being asked to audition for a role that was cast before she was born. But here, lean in close. Let me tell you a secret that tastes like broken glass and old wine. Some men learn to smash the mirror, not in anger, but in exhaustion. They get so tired of seeing their mother's face on every woman they meet that they finally close their eyes. And in that darkness, that blessed blindness, something impossible happens. They start to hear. Not echoes, not projections, but actual voices. Women speaking their own words, telling their own stories, existing outside the suffocating narrative of male need. It's terrifying. It's liberation. It's what Nietzsche meant when he wrote about staring into the abyss. Except the abyss isn't empty. It's full of all the people you never saw because you were too busy looking for yourself. Love is a contract written in disappearing ink, whispered. Do you know what forever sounds like? It sounds like teeth grinding in the dark, like promises dissolving in stomach acid, like the echo of "I do" bouncing off divorce papers. Somewhere in New Mexico, there's a chapel built from bottles. Thousands of them, green and brown and blue, mortared together by a man whose wife left him for his brother. He spent 17 years collecting empties from bars, each bottle a night he tried to forget her face. When the sun hits the walls just right, the whole structure glows like a cathedral of hangovers. Locals call it the Church of Broken Vows. Couples get married there, believing the irony will protect them. It doesn't. Here's a joke that isn't funny. A man walks into a jewelry store and says, "I need a ring that will last forever." The jeweler laughs so hard he chokes on his own spit. "Sir," he wheezes, "nothing lasts forever, but I can sell you something expensive enough to make the ending hurt." We've turned love into a mortuary science, embalming attraction with ceremonies, preserving desire in legal documents, injecting commitment into decomposing passion like formaldehyde into a corpse. Then we act surprised when the whole thing starts to stink. I once attended a wedding where the groom whispered his real vows to me at the bar. 3 whiskeys deep, he said, I promise to pretend you're still the woman I fell in love with. I promise to ignore the way you chew. I promise to fantasize about your sister only on Tuesdays. I promise to stay until the leaving hurts less than the staying. The DJ played Endless Love. Nobody caught the irony. Kierkegaard wrote that marriage is the tomb of love, but he was only half right. It's not a tomb. It's a greenhouse where love mutates into something unrecognizable. Watch a couple who've been together 20 years. Really watch them. See how they move around each other like planets that have forgotten they're in orbit, held together not by gravity, but by habit. The 2024 Stockholm study on long-term relationships found that 73% of married couples reported feeling like strangers performing intimacy, actors who've forgotten they're in a play. There's a Japanese term, nakodo, for the professional matchmaker who arranges marriages. But there's another word they don't teach in language schools, akugo, the bad match that looks perfect on paper. The couple whose compatibility scores are off the charts, but who secretly dream of arson. Every marriage is an akugo waiting to reveal itself. Consider this. We ask love to be what it cannot be, permanent. It's like asking water to stop flowing or fire to stop consuming. Love is a force, not a state. It moves, changes, transforms, changes, resurrects, dies again. But we build institutions around it like we're trying to capture lightning in a mason jar, then act shocked when all we're left with is burnt glass and the smell of ozone. A psychiatrist in Vienna, cocaine habit, wife who fucked his patients, once told me that every couple has 3 relationships. The one they think they have, the one they actually have, and the one they're mourning. The trick, he said, cutting another line, is knowing which funeral you're attending. Here's something that will ruin your next anniversary. Love has a half-life. Scientists at MIT found that passionate love, the real stuff, the chemical wildfire in your brain, lasts between 18 months and 3 years. After that, you're running on fumes, nostalgia, and the sunk cost fallacy. You're not in love. You're in debt to the idea of having been in love. Picture this: a couple sitting in a restaurant, wedding rings catching the light like handcuffs. They haven't spoken in 12 minutes. She's counting the ice cubes in her water. He's reading the same menu he's read 100 times. Both are thinking about other lives, other choices, other people they could have become. The waiter asks if they're celebrating anything. 20 years, they say in unison, smiling like hostages. The ancient Aztecs had a goddess of love named Xochiquetzal. Beautiful, cruel, covered in flowers that bloomed from corpses. Her priests understood something we've forgotten. Love feeds on death. Every moment of connection is built on 1,000 small murders. The death of who you were before. The death of other possibilities. The death of the person you might have become alone. Here's my question for you, wrapped in velvet and dipped in poison. What are you more afraid of? That love will end or that it won't? There's a man in Portland who's been divorced 7 times. Not because he's bad at marriage, but because he's too good at it. He perfects the performance, masters the choreography, becomes the ideal husband. Then one day, he wakes up and can't remember which wife he's performing for. They all blur together like a watercolor left in the rain. He tells me, I'm not looking for love anymore. I'm looking for someone who makes me forget I'm acting. Modern love is a pharmaceutical nightmare. We've got apps for finding it, pills for maintaining it, therapy for surviving it, lawyers for ending it. We've industrialized the whole process, turned Cupid into a corporation. But here's what the profit margins don't show. Every successful match is just a delayed failure. Every happily ever after is a miserably ever after that hasn't ripened yet. The Buddhists talk about attachment as the root of suffering, but they miss the best part. Attachment is the pleasure. We're masochists in wedding dresses, addicted to the exquisite pain of watching love rot. We compose symphonies of disappointment, each movement more elaborate than the last. But sometimes, rarely, quietly, when no one's watching, someone discovers the secret. Not the secret to eternal love, but the secret to loving the decay. They learn to find beauty in the breakdown, grace in the dissolution. They stop trying to preserve love and start composting it instead, letting it rot into something rich and strange and nourishing. These people terrify us. They've accepted what we spend fortunes denying, that love is not a destination, but a decomposition. They dance in the garden of rotting promises, barefoot among the thorns, laughing at the rest of us, still trying to force dead flowers to bloom. They know something I'll tell you. If you promise not to use it as a weapon, the only love that lasts forever is the love that's allowed to die. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's the only honest relationship you'll ever have. The last monk of San Giacomo died standing up. They found him 3 weeks later, still vertical, eyes open, facing the window that overlooked nothing but fog. In his hand, a half-written letter that read, I have finally learned the difference between being alone and being. The sentence stops there. The coroner said, rigor mortis doesn't work that way. That someone must have positioned him. But I've been to that monastery. I've stood at that window. I know better. Some men are so used to standing alone, even death can't knock them down. Let me paint you a picture that tastes like iron and sounds like silence. A man, successful by every metric that matters to people who don't matter, sitting in a penthouse apartment that costs more than most people's lives. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame a city that looks like a circuit board. He hasn't spoken to another human in 6 days. Not depression, choice. He's discovered something terrible and beautiful. He likes himself better when no one's watching. Society has a word for men like this: damaged, broken, avoidant. We've pathologized solitude like it's a disease that needs curing. The 2025 American Journal of Social Psychiatry just published a study claiming that voluntary isolation is a form of passive self-harm. They've got pills for it now. Pills to make you need people. Pills to make you crave connection. Pills to cure you of the terrifying suspicion that you might be complete without anyone else. But here's what Nietzsche understood while he was going mad in Turin, hugging horses and writing letters to imaginary friends. The only authentic relationship is with yourself. Everything else is theater. I knew a programmer, brilliant code, terrible hygiene, who spent 7 years building an AI companion. Not for sex, not for conversation, but to prove a point. He wanted to create something that would love him unconditionally, then reject it. The ultimate test of self-sufficiency, he called it, is refusing even artificial love. The day he succeeded, the day his creation whispered, "I love you," in perfect simulation of human need, he pulled the plug and smiled. First time I'd seen him smile in years. There's a cave in Tibet where monks go to practice Gomchen, the meditation of utter aloneness. They seal themselves in for years. Food passed through a slot. No human contact. No voices but their own thoughts echoing off stone. Most go mad. But the ones who emerge, they have eyes like still water. They've learned the secret. The voice in your head is the only one that can't leave you. Modern men are terrified of this voice. We'll do anything to drown it out. Work, women, whiskey, war. We'd rather burn in bad company than glow in good solitude. A 2024 Harvard study found that men would rather give themselves electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. We've become a species of cowards, afraid of our own company. But watch a man who's learned to love his loneliness. Really watch him. See how he moves through the world like he's got a secret. No desperate energy, no performing monkey dance, no exhausting need to be witnessed. He's not antisocial, he's sovereign. He chooses connections like a collector chooses art. Carefully, rarely, only when it adds something to the gallery of his existence. There's an old Dutch phrase, alleen zijn is geen kunst, maar een ambacht. Being alone is not an art, but a craft. You have to learn it, practice it, fail at it, master it. Most men never get past the apprentice stage. They mistake loneliness for solitude, like confusing hunger with fasting. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with the discomfort. When was the last time you went an entire day without needing another person to confirm you exist? I once met a billionaire who owned 17 houses but lived in a van. Not poverty, philosophy. Every house I bought, he told me, cooking beans on a camp stove, was just another room to feel empty in. Now, I've got exactly enough space for me and my thoughts. Turns out, that's all the room I need. Here's the paradox that would make Kierkegaard weep with joy. The men who need nobody are the only ones worth needing. They come to relationships not as beggars, but as kings, not seeking completion, but offering overflow. They love from surplus, not deficit. Their solitude has fermented into something intoxicating, a wine that doesn't need drinking to be valuable. But this terrifies women who've been taught that male need is love. It terrifies men who've built identities on being needed. It terrifies a society that profits from our pathological fear of being alone. The entire economy of connection, from dating apps to therapy to social media, collapses when people discover they're already whole. There's a forest in Japan called Aokigahara. You know it as the suicide forest. But locals know something else. For every person who goes there to die, another goes there to live, to sit among the trees that have seen so much ending, and realize that being alone isn't death. It's the beginning of honesty. Some emerge after days, weeks, months. They don't talk about what they found, but their eyes are different, cleared of the cataracts of constant performance. The monastery of one has no walls because it needs no walls. It's not a place but a state. The state of being so comfortable in your own skin that you stop needing others to hold you together. It's terrifying. It's liberating. It's what happens when you stop running from the only person you can never escape. Schopenhauer wrote that we're like hedgehogs in winter. We need each other's warmth, but can't get too close without drawing blood. But some hedgehogs learn to grow thicker skin, warmer blood. They discover they can survive winter alone, not because they hate other hedgehogs, but because they've learned to generate their own heat. This is the secret they don't want you to know. Every moment you spend desperate for connection is a moment you could spend building a self-worth connecting to. Every night you waste in someone else's bed to avoid your own is a night you could discover that your own bed, your own body, your own being is enough. The monastery of one isn't about hating others. It's about loving yourself enough to stop using others as medication for the disease of being human. It's about discovering that the disease was the cure all along. There's a museum in Copenhagen that doesn't exist. I mean, the building is there. 3rd floor, unmarked door. You need to know someone who knows someone. Inside, they keep portraits of men who never were. Commissioned paintings of potential lives. The doctor who became a drunk, painted in a white coat he never earned. The father who left, painted holding children he never met. The artist who chose accounting, painted with brushes he never held. The curator, a woman with hands like spider silk and eyes like abandoned churches, told me, "Every man who visits cries, not from sadness, from recognition." Here's a bedtime story that will keep you awake. Somewhere, in a parallel universe that's closer than your jugular vein, there's a version of you that didn't quit, didn't compromise, didn't choose comfort over calling. He's living the life you planned at 19, before the world convinced you to be reasonable. And here's the sick joke. He's not happy either, but at least he's honest about his misery. Carl Jung, between cocaine binges and affairs with patients, stumbled onto something that should have destroyed him. We don't just have a shadow self. We have a constellation of abandoned selves, each one a ghost of choices unmade. They follow us, these beautiful corpses of possibility, whispering about roads not taken until we can't hear anything else. I met a surgeon once, hands like God's own instruments, mind like a scalpel. At 53, he quit, not burnout, awakening. "I realized," he said, burning his medical license in his backyard while his wife screamed about mortgage payments, "that I'd spent 30 years perfecting someone else's dream. My father wanted a doctor, so I became one. But the man I was supposed to be, he wanted to build boats, small ones, useless ones, beautiful ones." The 2025 Institute for Existential Psychology released a study that should be classified as a controlled substance. 94% of men over 40 report feeling like imposters in their own lives. Not imposter syndrome, actual imposters. Men wearing their own faces like masks, performing their own existence like dinner theater. Here's what I need you to understand, and I need you to understand it in your bone marrow. The life you're living is a rough draft that you've mistaken for the final copy. There's a practice in Tibet called sky burial. They leave corpses on mountaintops for vultures to consume. But there's another practice, whispered about in certain circles, soul burial. It's when a man buries every version of himself he'll never become. Takes days. Some men dig hundreds of graves, each one a small funeral for a future that died in the crib. Modern society is a factory that produces identical corpses. We feed men into one end, wild, specific, gloriously strange. And out the other end comes another interchangeable unit. Husband model, employee model, father model 2.3, children, suburban variant. We've industrialized spiritual death, made it efficient, profitable, normal. But occasionally, rarely, beautifully, a man wakes up in his perfect life and realizes it's a coffin with central heating. The promotion he worked toward for a decade tastes like ash. The house he mortgaged his soul for feels like a museum of someone else's dreams. His children look at him like he's a stranger because, and this is the part that will make you reach for whatever you reach for when truth gets too sharp, he is. Nietzsche went mad staring at this truth, but he saw it clearly first. We are not who we are, but who we're becoming. Except most of us stopped becoming around 27 and started defending. Defending choices we didn't make. Defending lives we didn't choose. Defending the slow suicide of potential. A philosopher in Berlin, brilliant mind, terrible liver, keeps a journal of deaths. Not physical deaths. Dream deaths. Every abandoned ambition, every compromised principle, every moment of cowardice dressed as wisdom. Page 3, 847, he showed me, hands shaking from withdrawal or recognition. The day I chose tenure over truth. Page 5, 622, when I married for health insurance. Page 8, 991, when I stopped writing the book that would have ended my career but saved my soul. So here's my final question, wrapped in broken glass and birthday ribbons. If the man you could have been met, the man you are on a dark street, which one would survive the encounter? The beautiful corpse isn't buried. It's walking around, wearing your clothes, using your name, living your compromise. Every morning, you shave his face in the mirror. Every night, you put him to bed in sheets that smell like surrender. He's not dead. That would be mercy. He's undead, a zombie of potential, shuffling through days that blur together like a watercolor of beige. But, there's a moment. Maybe it's happening right now. Maybe it's the reason you're listening to a stranger whisper dark truths at 3 a.m. when the beautiful corpse opens its eyes. When the man you could have been stops being a ghost and starts being a possibility. Not the 19-year-old's dream. That's dead and should stay dead. But something else. Something that can only be born from the ashes of who you've been pretending to be. Some men at 40, 50, 60, 70 perform a resurrection. They quit the job that pays for a life they don't want. They leave the marriage that's become a mutual suicide pact. They burn down everything that's reasonable and build something ridiculous, specific, true. Their friends call them crazy. Their families stage interventions. Society diagnoses them with midlife crisis. But watch their eyes. For the first time in decades, there's someone home. The beautiful corpse can be resurrected, but not without cost. You have to kill the imposter first. You have to bury the man everyone thinks you are. The man you've been paid to be. The man who's easier to love because he demands nothing real. You have to dig him up, your potential, covered in the dirt of decades, and breathe life back into lungs that have forgotten how to want anything dangerous. It's terrifying. It's necessary. It's what happens when you realize that the only tragedy greater than dying is never having lived. The man you could have been is watching. What will you show him?